Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, someone who knows all there is about relearning love, Eri Kardos, a relationship coach, TED speaker, best-selling author, and mother who is here to talk not only about her TED Talk and Relearn Love practice coaching program, but also her crush that worked out. Eri, how are you?
Hey, Kendra, so great. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. You have a really interesting story, and I can't wait to dive in. But before we dive into that crush and all that jazz, can you tell people where they can find you online?
Of course, the two best places are going to be going straight to my website, which is relearnlove.com. It's learn, Learn, love, love.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Coach Eri Kardos.
Right. So you are only the third person in over 150 episodes that has talked about a crush that's worked out. Why do you think so many crushes go unrequited?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. And I'm so sad about that statistic. Yeah, I feel like, well, there's many things, but one, I think, when people, okay, let me back up. Everyone learned love. Right? We all learned how to love, how to give love, how to receive love at a really early age. Like before the age of 7, we had it ingrained into our system what love is supposed to, quote unquote, be like. And most of us didn't learn the tools for actually getting the love we want. So most of us didn't learn how to communicate really well or how to be with our emotions. So imagine you have an amazing crush and you don't know what to do with all those feels. And most of us get really freaking awkward, right? We kind of like bump through it, or we're like so afraid of what might happen if they find out, and we're afraid of rejection, or not being good enough, or being too much, right? We have all these fears, and so I think a lot of times what happens is that people feel these things and don't know what to do with them, and so we withhold this crush, and years later we get to go on this show and say, oh, it didn't work out. But I think that had we all learned a different way of being with our emotions and how to really be in love or be with the feelings of love, you'd have a different statistic. You'd have a lot more people telling their exciting stories of how, even though it was scary, they knew how to lean into those fears, or they knew how to navigate the discomfort really smoothly, or how to receive the discomfort if you're the person being crushed on, right? It's like, well, how do we actually be with that instead of stigmatizing it and allow the joy to unfold, or the weirdness, or whatever it is, but instead of avoiding it. And yeah, that's what I would say is probably if we just learned things differently, there'd be very different outcomes on the show.
But your crush did work out when you first met your now husband. Despite there being a connection, you didn't actually connect upon that first meeting. You said his ex actually introduced you to. Was that the ex at the time or the ex he'd soon have?
Oh my goodness, our story is super weird and complicated, and I'll tell all the behind the scenes things that we don't share all the details of usually. But here we go. So the ex was not at the time. So she was my best friend when I worked at Amazon.com doing leadership development, and she had been partnered with him during business school. And so they had already broken up and moved on to different relationships. And she just introduced us thinking that you two should meet, you have a lot in common. And she was spot on. We do have a lot in common. So we connected on Facebook back before there was Facebook Messenger, and we kind of chatted a little bit, but we didn't actually meet in person. So years went by, and then one day I got a message saying that he was coming to Seattle on a speaking tour, and he wanted to know if I wanted to meet up. At the time, I was running an intentional community in Seattle, and I said, yeah, great, come on over. Would love to have you stay. We've got a guest room if you want to. And then but before he came, I warned him. I said, hey, I practice polyamory. And so in our house, you may see people cuddling with each other, and please know it's all consensual and it's fine, And he said, okay, that's great. I'm familiar with it. But at the time he was in a monogamous relationship with another man. And so when he came over, I was actually at that time in a relationship with 5 people.
Oh, wow.
So I know, I call it polysaturated. I had way too many friends at the time. And he was monogamous, and Jamie was monogamous. And so here we are meeting, and neither of us has any like room to consider anyone else romantically, right? So we just got to hang out, and we both were like, wow, you're so amazing. Like there's something really special here. And we did something super unique, and he led me in what's called what he calls a nurture dance. And somehow we ended up like just holding each other like in a very sweet, loving, nurturing way. And it felt so beautiful and safe. And I was like, wow, this is a special human. I want to keep him in my life. I don't know what this is. So then he leaves, life continues. I end up, transitioning most of my relationships to friendships over many months. And I get this strange feeling one day. I get this, like, it was like almost like a message from God or something. And I called Jamin up, and because we'd stayed friends, we were in touch and stuff. And I called him, I said, this is going to sound so weird, but I think I'm supposed to have your baby.
He's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, I'm thinking this is a monogamous gay man. I know he's bi and he's queer. But I'm thinking, he's taken, maybe he and his partner are going to need a child or want a child. So I said, so if you guys ever need a surrogate, let's have that conversation. And this is not something I just offer to people, right? This is a very weird come from God message. And he was like, wow, okay. I didn't expect that. And that's so beautiful. Thank you. And we'll just keep that in mind. And then life continues. And a few months later, they've ended their relationship. He was really, I think, seeking something more open anyways. And now I'm down to like one partner, maybe. I'm pretty much like, okay, I have more spaciousness in my life. We're both, at this point in our lives, we're both professional authors, speakers, and coaches. And I noticed on his website that he's going to be speaking in San Francisco the same week I'm going to be speaking. So I messaged him. I was like, hey, do you want to like hang out? And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. So we make some plans, and I say, okay, it's a date. He said, oh no, if it's a date, then I want to like actually make it a full day date. So it's not just like sitting across the table from each other. I want to really get to know you and how you operate in real life and under stressful situations. Like if we miss a bus or something. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm speaking, I think like 3 or 4 times that week, and he's got a big talk, and he decides he's going to fly in from Cape Town, South Africa early. Like something in him tells him just be there for her first talk. So he changes his flights and just comes straight to San Francisco, and he surprises me by coming to my first talk, and it was great. And then I said, hey, tomorrow night we're going out to dinner. You want to join some friends and I? He said, yes. And then after that dinner, I invited him back to my place, and that began a week of beautiful connection and realizing, oh my gosh, like I'm crushing so hard on this guy. Like now that I know that he's available and I'm available, like I can see him in a whole new light. And I'm like, this is amazing. So I got to like really just start to share hearts with him. And he went to my talks and I went to his talks, and it was amazing. And then at the end of the week, I had just finished my last talk, and he'd already moved his flight again, like twice, so he could stay longer. And he's like, I have to go. So, I've got a line of people coming up to talk to me after the class, and he's got to leave. And I'm like, everybody hold on. And I turned to him, and I stepped to the side. I'm like, hey, do you want to be partners? I have a total crush on you. Do you want to be partners? And he's like, yes. And then I gave him a quick kiss. He gave me a kiss, and he left. And then half an hour later, after I'm done and packing everything up, I'm on a call with him, and he's in the car headed to the airport, and he's like, so what does it mean to be partners with you? And I was laughing. I'm like, good question. I said, we're going to just figure it out, and we're going to make it whatever we want it to be. And so that was the beginning of an amazing love story for us, where it's like these 2 people who have so many similarities on paper, at least, came together. We're both pansexual, we're both queer, we're both, we both want to practice what we call conscious relating. And for us, that means that over the past decade, we have been really tuned into us as a couple and what is our foundation. So we are the foundation each time. We come back to, well, how do we feel? What makes us feel alive? And what do we need to feel safe and free to be ourselves and still love each other? And so we've created many different things over the years, many different structures, many different experiences. Sometimes we've been monogamous. Sometimes we've been momogamous, where I've been just wanting to be focused on being a mom, especially because we had children right away, and it was amazing. We were very intentional about wanting to be parents. So our kids are only 17 months apart, and they've been raised on the road. And so there was a good period where I had, 2 kids under 2, and I just want to be focused on being a mom. And that was awesome. And there have been times when each of us has been celibate at different times. And there have been times when we've been available and dating other people, whether it's in a long-term relationship with someone else. Both of us have had partners for over 6 years at different points. And we've also, been partnered with or played with many different people, whether it's emotionally, energetically, sexually, whatever it may be. But we tune into what do we need as individuals and as a couple, and how do we create the freedom and safety to do that within this relationship. And it's been amazing.
But going back to that initial connection you had, what do you think it stemmed from? Was it being so similar? Was it good conversation back and forth? Or was it, do you think it was something deeper, like that message from above?
Yeah. I think that fate plays a part in these things. And I think, chemicals help with that too. He's really sexy.
For listeners, I did see pictures, and he is very handsome.
He is. Like, he just did a cracking up. Like, I think we're both gonna be 41 this year. And he just did a boudoir photo shoot like a month ago, and I got the pictures back last night. I'm like, oh my God, my husband is so hot. Like, so I think that helps a lot. But we had so much in common too, and we both had this epic love of travel and of good food, and we both want to be parents, and we've been to the same festivals and conferences, and we'd both left our amazing corporate gigs to start our own companies and be coaches, authors, and speakers. Like, we just had a lot in common, and we couldn't stop talking, and we couldn't stop touching each other, wanting to go on adventures. Like, every day was a new adventure for us. And I think that played so much into how we initially formed. Like, what was that crush all about? Yeah.
And being a relationship coach, what would you say you've seen is the most common thing people tend to bond over when first meeting? Like, what's a sign that this could be a thing more than a crush?
Yeah. I think that, paying attention to the physical cues is really important. I think our bodies are very, very smart. And so, being able to, if you find yourself really turned on and feeling some sort of draw towards someone, this is worth paying some attention to. Not putting all your eggs in one basket, because our hormones can be a little deceiving. And also we're oftentimes attracted to patterns that remind us of things from our childhood. So we need to be a little bit cautious that we're not going to repeat things that are going to keep us stuck. But I would say the initial physical signs are great. And then looking for, when you're talking to each other, are you noticing that there's some sort of shared vision that you're geeking out on? I think that's one of the biggest predictors for success is, can you guys see that the thing you want is a shared vision? Do you both want to live a similar lifestyle one day? Do you both want to have kids? Do you both imagine traveling the world? What is it and if you both have a shared vision, that can mean so much for the success of your relationship.
And when you first met, he comes into a house, you have 5 partners, he only has the one. Was there a period of time where he had to get used to the idea of the poly lifestyle, or was he pretty open? He seems like a pretty open guy.
Yeah, he had already been around that type of community for a while, and he'd heard all about it, listened to podcasts on it. So he was already exposed, and he had already been desiring to see what that was like, to try it out one day. And he did talk to his partner about it before too. But his partner was very clear that he wanted monogamy at some point in time. So it was like, okay, well, this is not something I need to push for. So for him, it wasn't so weird. It was actually more desired and more in alignment with what he thought he'd want. So that wasn't weird. And I remember when we met, he wasn't looking at me like a romantic partner, and I wasn't looking at him like a romantic partner. So that also helped. And then by the time we started dating, I had one other partner that I'd been with for years. And I think that, for him, that wasn't a concern because there'd already been this established trust.
And you said you're poly, you're open, and you have other crushes. Who are some of your like celebrity crushes right now?
Ooh, celebrity crushes. That's a good one. I would say that I'm like, wow. I really have this dream that I've held on to for a long time that I really would like John Legend to be singing to me while I'm making love, or maybe I'm making love with John Legend. I don't know. We'll see. And then after I read Will Smith's biography, I was like, oh my God, I am even more in love with that man.
Is it good?
It's such a good book.
Okay.
It is such a good book. I highly recommend anybody who hasn't read it. It's so good. And him and, oh my God, Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, may be one of my top favorite books to read. It will blow your mind and you'll learn so much.
I have that one because I lived in Virginia and we lived by this really big, like they would get like once a book had been on the shelves for a while, it was kind of like a big Scholastic book fair. So they'd get the books there and they'd be cheaper. So I'd go there every few months and just get a bunch of books. And I'm a very slow reader. So we've had Trevor Noah's for about 3 years now. And one day I will get to it. But I'm currently on one that hopefully I'm going to finish soon. And then, but then I want to read Elliot Page's next. And I have too many stacked up. But I do.
I hear you. It's a wonderful problem to have. And honestly, if you can get the Audible version of Born a Crime, because Trevor Noah reads it reads it himself, and he's just so funny, and his storytelling is phenomenal. So it may be worth it to just skip the reading the book and listen to the Audible version on this one.
Maybe I'll have to do that because I am so backed up and I love memoirs. That's my favorite kind of book. That or like sociology type books about like the different generations. Like I'm reading, like I love books about millennials and Gen X and stuff like that. That's the kind of nerd that I am. I'm like, let's read a book about Pokemon and its impact on the world.
Yes, I love this.
You mentioned conscious relating, and I feel like that is why 10 years later into this marriage, things are still going strong, and you still consider him a crush, because I feel like when you get married, people forget to crush on their own husband, wife, or partners.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so I am totally still crushing on this man, and I think there's a couple different things about it. And I don't believe there's one right or wrong way to do relating in terms of structure. Like, I don't believe that open relating is better than monogamy or anything. We've been monogamous many times in our relationship. For us, it's just tuning into like, how do we keep it conscious? How do we make sure we're not just falling into the, work, Netflix, and go to bed routine, which a lot of people do, especially after you get married. I think there's something that kind of clicks in your brain of like, okay, well, now the boring part begins. And we stop crushing and we stop dating. We stop dating our crushes, which sucks because that's the fun part, and my husband and I are not married until death do us part. We are married so long as we're serving each other's highest good and growth. And every calendar year, sometime during the year, we just tune in and say, hey, are you still crushing on me? Am I still crushing on you? What do we need to do to make this even better? And then we'll intentionally make the changes that need to happen. And if we are still choosing each other, we'll get married again. So this year will be our 10th wedding. Should we decide to get married? We're looking at potentially getting married again in August. But the date moves all the time, which is really fun because we get to just tune in and say, it's not expected. Do we really want this or not? And we've had epic weddings. I mean, we've had ones that have been, like 65, 70 people, all at this epic resort doing a traditional Balinese wedding. We're based right now in Bali, Indonesia. The traditional Balinese wedding, and it was so beautiful. Or we've, gotten married on top of the world's largest Buddhist temple. We've practiced. We've gotten married in fake animal fur on a ferry outside of Seattle. We got married last year on a cruise off of Turks and Caicos. Like, we just have a lot of fun with it. And every time is different. And it's like, what do we want? And like, how do we have fun remarrying each other and refinding each other again? And it's been amazing. So, if you have a crush and you end up, if you're one of the other 2 people listening who had a crush that ended up with them, like, don't lose it. Don't lose it once you take that big scary step of communicating it and then navigating what happens next. If you guys end up together, like, don't forget that they're your crush. Keep putting back into this.
And when you decided, you get married every year, if you guys decide to, was that something you agreed upon before the first wedding? Something thought of as like your second anniversary approach? Like, what led to that? Like, we're gonna do this every year if we want to.
Yeah, I think we stumbled upon it, honestly, and it became so much fun. We're like, why not? Why not? Like, in our family, we celebrate birthdays and half birthdays. It's like, why not? Like, why not have more celebration in our lives? And there's no reason not to. And so the first year was very much, we're getting married, and it was not a legal marriage. It was a big wedding with our communities, and it was so beautiful. And then the next year, we knew we wanted to have kids, and we wanted to get going on that quickly. So we decided it would probably be a lot easier from a tax standpoint and travel standpoint with passports and everything if we all had matching passports. So let's get legally married. So then my sister was our officiant, and this was the fake animal fur on a ferry boat outside of Seattle. And it was so fun. This was our legal wedding. And then, the third wedding was actually kind of an accident. So what happens is my husband is Indian, and so in the Hindu tradition, when you attend another wedding, so his closest cousins were getting married. The closest cousins to you who are already married, which happen to be Jamin and I, need to get remarried first in order to bless the wedding, to bless the new couple and really sanctify the marriage. So we ended up being asked to get remarried. And so we had a whole Hindu ceremony without even planning it. It just happened. And we were like, oh my God, we just got remarried a third time. This is so great. We should just keep getting married. So I think it was after that third wedding that we decided, like, let's just keep this going. And it's been awesome, but the 6th year was total crap. It was terrible. Like, that year, I think our kids were, once kids reached like around age, I don't know, they were probably around 4 or something.
Oh, I teach pre-K. Yep.
Yeah. There's this thing. There's this, kids, and so I'm like, I don't even know what to say. If you're parents out there, you get it. But our kids were reaching a different age, and they were becoming a little bit more independent. They didn't need us as much. They weren't as cute as they were when they were little newborns. They're still adorable, but there was something that was happening where the focus wasn't in hardcore new parent survival mode. And we started looking at each other and being like, I don't know about you, like, do I still really crush on you or not? I don't know. And we had to do some soul searching. And so we both went and worked with some awesome professionals. I really, really, really encourage everyone, get outside support. You can't see your own mess when you're in it. Even I have had tools for a long time, but I can't see my own mess. And sometimes I misuse, like, I don't know how to use my tools when I'm triggered, right? Mm-hmm. It's harder for me to. So, and this is for all humans. We're all human. So, for us, we called in outside support in the form of therapists and coaches, and we really looked at our own crap and what we were bringing to the table and the stories we were holding about each other and about our relationship, and we just had to clear stuff out. So we decided to, instead of get remarried, we decided to go to this volcano in Bali with 2 witnesses, and we created what we called the relationship death ritual.
I was going to ask, what is that?
we just killed off the old version of us. Like, Esther Perel, I love this woman so much. I want to be her when I grow up. But Esther Perel has this amazing quote. If you're not familiar with her, check her out. She's an amazing therapist. And she has this quote that says, in your lifetime, you'll be in many relationships, perhaps with the same person. And we just needed a new style of our relationship. So we came together after doing a lot of soul searching and self-reflection, and we just named all the different stories we were carrying that we had to let go of in order for us to recreate something new. The stories that I held about my husband and who I think he is, and like how I'm keeping him stuck in his box. Stories that he had about me, stories I had about us and who we are and what our relationship is. It was just a lot of like weighted down crap with a lot of old patterns in it, especially from childhood, and a lot of like pointing a finger at somebody, and we named it all, and we took responsibility for what we could. And like, here's how I have not been showing up in love in this relationship. Here's how I've been kind of a shitty partner, and said, asked for forgiveness, and then called in what we really wanted. And so we basically like just threw away the old version of us and got out a blank canvas and said, what do we want to paint now? And it was such a powerful decision to go through that. And on the other side, what we had intentionally created for the next version of us was so beautiful that it felt like we just got remarried. And I was like, what just happened? I'm like, I think I just remarried you a sixth time. I wasn't sure if we were going to get divorced or what, but I think I just remarried you. And we did it. We made it through that really tough period. And I think the only way we could have done that is coming back to love and letting go of what wasn't serving us anymore.
All of this reminds me of like how modern love is now, with the polyamorous relationships, going to therapy, because this is something our grandparents were not doing. But It made me think of, have you ever read Aziz Ansari's book, Modern Romance?
Not yet, but I've heard great things.
Yeah, like it's really, really good. But he just talks about how our grandparents kind of just married whoever was next door, but the internet opening it up, and like you can fall in love with someone across the world. Are you seeing that more and more, like these long distance relationships? And do you think we're better off in love now than our grandparents, who, to their credit, did stay married really, really long times, but they probably weren't as happy?
Okay. So this is such a complicated answer. Let me start with a question. This is a question for you, Kendra, and everyone who's listening. So the question is, how many happy, healthy, long-term couples do you actually know? And you can define that however you want. What is happy? What is healthy? What is long-term?
Right. Honestly, growing up, my parents weren't together. I was the only kid in my neighborhood with a split, like a single mom at the time, but happy. Looking at all the parents now, a lot of them aren't together. But probably just my best friend's parents, really, growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not even growing up. Like now, how many happy, healthy, long-term couples do you know?
Oh, all my friends are single.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. This is it. So so there's many things. So I asked this question all over the world, and the answer is usually, like when I say usually, I mean like 90% is usually between 0 and 3 couples total that people know. And so I want to be really cautious to say, like, what are we striving for? In the past, there was a lot more pressure and social acceptance that you were just going to stay together with your partner forever. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you were happy, that wasn't even something people really cared about. It was more like, are we surviving? Are we procreating? Are we, like, these are the fundamental things. Now we're in a new era where we're not just looking at like, are we surviving and are we procreating? We're looking at, are we happy? And it's very different. And we're starting to look at other factors too, like what is a successful relationship? And some people are like, well, how many times a week are you having sex? And how long have you stayed together? And, there's just lots of different factors that people are looking at. And here's the one thing that I really want to stress is that ancestrally, families were staying together because that was what you did. And there was a lot of survival reasons not to. And now we don't have those. There's far less pressure, far less globally. I mean, there's still pressure for sure, especially depending on what culture you come from, but there's far less. We have lots of examples of how divorce is like a common thing globally now. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at what is it that keeps people together and why. And here's the thing, if we're going to do that, we need to start using science. We cannot just rely on figuring it out, because we're not going to figure it out. Love and relationships is not a natural thing for humans to be really good at. I'm sorry. The feeling of love is really nice. The procreation, the creating of babies is like something we're naturally good at. But the sustaining long-term love in relationships is actually quite challenging, especially in today's fast-paced world with so much communication, so much access to data. So we have to understand that what we learned about what love is supposed to be like is based on what we saw modeled by our parents, which a lot of I would say almost all of our parents didn't model it perfectly, even though they tried. It's not their fault. They learned from their parents and their community, right? But it's an intergenerational trauma passed down. And here we are. If we want to have this amazing love and relationships that we see in movies, which is a little bit like unrealistic, but if we want to have this thing that's out there and it is possible, then we have to learn it. And when I say learn it, I mean, we have to recognize that what we learned is probably crap and it's not going to get us what we want. So we have to let those things go and then create space and learn the tools that actually work. So you have to find out who knows what works. And there are amazing institutes like the Gottman Institute who have decades and decades of research. And we know it's not like a qualitative fluffy subject. This is a very quantitative subject now. We know what works and what doesn't work when it comes to love and relationships. We know that you need to learn emotional skills. You have to learn how to be with your emotions instead of avoiding them. And you have to learn how to look for the messages in them and communicate those in a way that the listener will understand. We know that you have to learn how to listen, like really listen instead of listening to defend or to protect yourself. We know that you have to learn how to handle conflict and to do so in a way where you can really navigate this together. And if you really, in like intimacy, like people don't even understand, like, yes, whatever you're doing in bed is probably great, but there's so much more that you don't understand. And there's so much more vulnerability and connection and available to you that you just don't know because you didn't learn it. But you can learn all these things now. So if you want these long-term happy relationships, you gotta learn it.
And I feel like Aziz Ansari could have used you for modern romance, but you were in another book, you and Jamin's story. How did you wind up in one of the Chicken Soup for the Souls? Because those are heavy hitters in the book market.
Those are heavy hitters. Yeah. Jamin and I have done some strange and wonderful things together. Yeah. So he was actually invited. We have some very talented friends around the world, and somebody had heard part of our love story, and contacted Chicken Soup for the Soul for us originally. And then we ended up entering conversation with them and saying, yeah, like, let's share a chapter of our love story. It was actually our crush, like, how did the crush begin? And what did it mean from a cultural perspective? Because my husband's Indian. He was supposed to marry an Indian woman from one of 5 specific villages in the state of Gujarat in India. And she's supposed to be a virgin and a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, and then he meets me, and I am, if you only hear my voice, but guys, I am as white as they come. And I was definitely not a virgin, and I'm definitely not from one of these 5 villages in India. And while I have an MBA, I'm not an engineer or a doctor. So it was like, okay, this woman is none of these things that she's supposed to be. And it caused a lot of stress. And there was a period of time where Jamin was disowned by part of his family, and he had to sort through that. And in his journey, he really came back to love. And how can he love me? How can he choose love? And he was choosing to love on me, but also choosing to love his family. And in this hero's journey, at some point, his grandmother was on her deathbed and just asked for a truce in the family. And he was able to go home and really open up about, like, love is not an or, it's an and. I can love her and I can love all of you, right? And it was it still is a beautiful journey of healing. And now whenever we are on speaking tour and we go back to the US, we live with the family. We live with a family that, wouldn't speak, there's at least one family member who wouldn't speak to me and wouldn't look at me, and we live with them. And it's beautiful. And I learned how to cook with them. And I leave my children with them because they're incredible. Like, they're just an incredible family. But we had to go through this healing process. And I think that is what was captured really beautifully in Chicken Soup for the Soul.
That is all beautiful. And, shout out to Indian food, learning that is the best cuisine. That and Italian are tied for me. It's why I will not leave Columbus. There's an Indian restaurant down the street that I can never say goodbye to. I just can't. I will never.
I understand. I cooked Gujarati food last night and I was like, oh, I miss cooking this. It's so freaking good.
The spice is just, it's so wonderful. But I'm sure this story is going to continue to inspire people everywhere. Just your lives in general seem so cool. You're just like moving around, doing your thing, loving, celebrating each other, showing what's important in life. But now that we talked about Jamin and you, it's time to talk about you more and what you have going on. I want to know what initially drew you to the world of relationship coaching, especially coming from working for such a big corporation.
Yeah. So I would say that my whole life I've been super curious about love and intimacy. My parents, so I was raised in Michigan, just around the corner from you. And I was raised in a very conservative Christian community, and my parents taught marriage courses in their church. I think they still do to this day. And so love was already a big topic, and I had really incredible models for what is possible for marriage and love. It wasn't my style, but it was definitely something that piqued my interest. And then, growing up conservative Christian, I'm sure if you haven't grown up conservative Christian, you've at least heard those jokes about how Catholic school girls grew up to be the kinkiest ones. And it's so true. There's just this, there's just this weird pull that happens where there's just so much pressure to be one way. And then you want to find out what's the other side like.
Yeah, what are they hiding over there?
That sounds like more fun over there.
Yeah.
So I definitely had my period where I swung the other way and tried everything that I wanted to try, and I had a blast. And one day I'll write a book with my whole story, and it's very weird and wonderful. But in that journey, I learned so much about how vast and varied the world is when it comes to sexuality and intimacy and relating and how people relate. And I kept noticing similar foundational skills, which were around how do we connect vulnerably and create safety for ourselves and for other people we're with, so that we can really be connected. And it didn't matter what your religion was or what your sexual orientation was. It doesn't matter. It's all the same foundational skills. And so this is playing. Imagine there's two Aries kind of playing. There's one that is all about sex and relating, and then there's one that's on this good girl success path, right? And they're happening simultaneously. And so here I am trying to figure out sex and relating, and I'm also just trying to climb the corporate ladder. So I get my undergraduate degree in sexual psychology. I go off and I end up managing a youth hostel in Boston for a couple of years. And then I decided it's time to do something even more mature. And I applied to a bunch of business schools and get accepted to the world's #1 international business school. Go there, get my MBA. I'm traveling, I'm completing in 5 countries around the world. And then I get hired by Amazon into a elite leadership development program where they take 3 people every year, which is where I met my friend who introduced me to Jamin, right? She became my best friend there. And what I'm noticing as I'm working with my executives is that they start, as time and trust is established, they start opening up to me more about their personal lives. And I start hearing about this loneliness, whether they're single or they're in relationship and it's just not going well. There's this sense of loneliness. And I'm realizing that it doesn't matter how much you climb the corporate ladder, how successful academically you've been. We didn't learn the skills we need to be in long-term, meaningful, happy relationships. So I started asking consent, hey, can I coach you on more of the holistic picture? Can I coach you on your relationships too? Because I was a certified coach by then and had this background in sexual psychology. Many of them said yes. And what I found is that as I'm coaching people around matters of the heart and the bedroom, they're coming to work with more clarity and drive and focus and happiness. And it's having a ripple effect into the boardroom. And I'm watching entire teams shift through happiness in the heart of a leader. So I'm like, this is incredible. I want to do this all the time. And I start getting referred out. So by day, I'm working at Amazon doing leadership development. And by night and weekends, I am coaching executives at Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Boeing, SpaceX, Relativity, Hollywood actors. Like it's like, wow, it doesn't matter what people do. We haven't learned these things. So let's learn these things. And I decided one day, I'm like, I just want to do this all the time. So I ended up quitting my job at Amazon and traveling the world to speak on the subject and speaking on 6 continents and writing a best-selling book called Relationship Agreements, which was formed out of all these experiences I've been having and screwing up on. Like I would learn a big lesson about how not to do this. And I'd put it in the book, like, let me show you what I learned. And a lot of these were taken, this idea of creating relationship agreements was taken from this idea that I learned in Amazon and learned from my father, who's a lawyer, of like, what if we stop making assumptions and write things down, get clarity and create exactly what we want instead of guessing at what a relationship is, especially when we have such vast backgrounds. So this whole thing continued. I came back from my speaking tour and I was like, I want to do this all the time. So I started my own company called Relearn Love. And I've been doing that ever since. And my TEDx came out a little over a month ago.
We'll get to the talk, but I do want to know, you do couple coaching, but you also coach single people, which I think is unique because I often just hear relationship coach and it's just like for 2 people or maybe more. But no, what do you think are the benefits for single people when it comes to Relearn Love?
Yeah. So again, I think just being human.
Really quick, all my friends, please listen to this part. Okay. They're single.
I'm like, what are we listening to?
They're single.
All right. So everyone tuning in who's single, if you're single by choice, then that's wonderful. And I celebrate that. And you're more than enough and you don't need to be in partnership, first of all. And if you would like to be in partnership, then great. And I really encourage everyone to just lean into the idea that you didn't learn what would be really helpful for you. And if you want to be ready for love, if you want to really step into love, then it's time to learn the skills that you didn't learn, that you should have learned in grade school, honestly, but you didn't. So it's okay to be where you're at, but now is the perfect time to learn more about your patterns that are holding you back, to learn more about the different traumas that you're carrying. And everyone's carrying trauma. I know it's like a cool buzzword right now, but really, I'm like, our nervous systems are just carrying crap around with us that is triggering us a lot. And we can figure out how to be with that instead of freak out, right, and keep repeating the same things over and over again. We can learn how to set healthy boundaries. We can learn how to ask for what we want in a way that will be received. We can learn how to handle and be with our fears. We can learn how to take rejection in a different way. We can learn how to create more possibilities of getting what we want because we know how to ask for it. We can learn how to listen better. We can learn how to communicate better. There's so much that you can do in preparation for the relationship that you want, including getting clear on what do you want. Most people don't even know what they want. They have this idea. They're like, I want to be like Brad Pitt or whatever, like it's like we need to get more clear on what is it that we actually want, and not just from a physical standpoint. Not like I want to be 6'4" and make at least 7 figures. It's like, oh no, I want to feel this way. How do you want to feel when you're with your beloved? Because that's going to make a big difference in what you're calling in. And most people are unconsciously or subconsciously calling in the feelings they felt when they were a kid, which is not really what most of us really want. Like when I come down to, I'm like, do you really want to feel that way you felt with around your dad or around your mom? Because if you don't, then you need to be more conscious on what you want to be, what you really want to feel now with your beloved. It's way easier to call in what you're used to than what you actually desire. And learn how to practice those emotions so that when they show up, you have the capacity to hold that human, right? And imagine, I know you're calling this human in, but they're calling you in. So you got to be ready for them, right? There's just so much here that if we tune in, it can be so powerful, and it's going to make your next relationship so much juicier if we get intentional about it.
And you kind of mentioned some of the stuff you talked about in your TEDx talk, how to turn conflict into connection. In it, you mentioned a few scenarios that would lead to dealing with relationships like XYZ, and they each stem from different type of upbringings. And I know like we focus a lot on mental health nowadays, but how do you think that like required parenting classes would help most people avoid like those shitty childhoods and like help them develop like as adults, like with these normal relationships? Like we could just, start as like normal and then keep growing normally. Like we wouldn't have all the trauma if our parents just went and did the work first.
Okay. So first of all, if you're any parents out there or future parents out there, just know that you are going to screw up your kids no matter what, even if you took classes. So, however, I know that my husband and I are screwing up our kids. We are doing things that are going to be painful, but one of the big differences is that we know we can see when we make our mistakes, and we know how to repair, and we know how to create a lot more safety to find out what's going on internally for our children than most parents do. And we know how to communicate with them in ways that are going to cause less damage. And we can have these vulnerable, open conversations about them and their emotions with them in ways that most parents don't know how to do. So it's not, and I wish a parenting class was the be all end all, but honestly, learning these skills is going to help so much for the future generations and for yourself. Like the tools that I teach with my private clients, I so many of them I'm using on myself, and I'm encouraging them to use on themselves, not just, and they're all, not all, many of them are parenting skills. They're tools I use with my kids and tools I use on my husband and tools I use on myself, because it's all the same foundation of, how do we keep coming back to love, and how do we be with our emotions? The Gottman Institute, found that if they could do one thing to influence the next generation of kids, so when they grow up, they could be in healthy, happy, long-term relationships, it would be to teach them how to be with their emotions. So they have a whole process called emotion coaching, which I think is so beautiful, but really just learning how to, instead of invalidate the child's experience, how do we allow them to feel all that they're feeling and have it be valid and have it be welcome, and find out if there's any way that we can support them in this experience that they're having, and let them know they're not weird or they're not strange for feeling what they're feeling. And guess what? We need that too. How many times have we been, have we had a big emotional experience and then instantly invalidated ourselves because that's what we're used to, or tried to ignore it and jump over it, or distract ourselves, or blame ourselves for feeling a certain way? And these are all learned behaviors from our childhood. So learning how to be compassionate with ourselves now and being with our emotions now is such a big skill. And that is going to translate over to your relationship. When my husband is having big feels, or when I'm having big feels, I don't want him to problem solve me. And I don't want him to invalidate me. I just want to be heard in my emotions, so my emotions can move, and then I can think clearly and creatively again. And I'm enough just as I am. But if I don't know how to do that for myself, how can I do that for him? How can you do it for me? And how can we do that for our children? So I think this is the big juicy piece that we need to keep coming back to. We need to learn new ways of being. And if parents learned how to do this, even if they messed it up, which they will at some point in time, is we're going to be human and we're going to get triggered, even if we learn it, we're still going to have mistakes. But if we can keep coming back to how do we actually do repair with our kids in real time? I mean, how many people can remember their parents saying, "I'm sorry" to them?
Oh,
Right?
I actually have one note. My mom wrote me and my brother, handwritten note, and she just, was like, "Thank you for all you guys do," and I saved it all. I was in middle school, so my brother was in elementary at the time, and I saved it and I sent it to him the other day, like a picture. I was like, "Look what I found the one time mom like
Oh,
said something nice to us." He was like, "Aw."
oh yeah, that one, and it made a difference that one time.
Yeah, we were like,
You know?
"Oh." But then I think looking back, I also knew like like, man, this woman's raising these kids in this town that's full of meth, and she's single, her boyfriend's an alcoholic. So I think even as a kid, I kind of was like, she's going through it. Let me just,
Yeah.
buckle down. I think that's why I'm very much like, I was very like, how they call those kids an old soul as a child, because I had to grow
Yeah.
up faster. And
You
that's,
had to
you
grow
can
fast.
definitely see the difference of like my childhood that was so chaotic to my husband, who came from like the most like Wonder Years suburban life, like two parents, two incomes. Like, we're so
Yeah.
different. We make
Yeah.
it work.
So different. And I bet you guys complement each other really well.
We
And
do. We
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
When he first met my family, he was like, wow. These people are crazy. But so How to Turn Conflict into Connection is out now. It's really good. It's not too long either. It's a good watch. It's interesting. I love like anything that's about like childhood and how that impacts us. I think that's so interesting. But what would you do for your next talk?
Oh, wow. I haven't thought about a next talk, to be honest. Can I tell you about my idea for a next thing, though?
Sure.
So there's a couple things. I'm trying to, I also like to follow flow and intuition and where it's going. And right now, what's alive for me is getting ready for the Tedx Talk took a lot, and it was a beautiful journey, and I learned so much in the process, and I'm so glad it's done. And right now, what's coming through for me is, starting to gather stories for my own memoir, because I've had a very weird life, and I want to just start capturing this and taking my time and figuring out how would I even begin to explain the weirdness of my life and how it has led to getting to impact thousands of people in such a positive way so that they can experience love on such a deeper level. So that's what's alive right now.
Well, in just the hour we've spoken, I'm intrigued. I will buy. Will I read it on time, Eri? I don't know. Maybe it'll be on my shelf for a while, but we'll get to it.
I'll
But
send you the Cliff Notes version, no worries.
okay. Like I'm just a slow reader. I love to read. I'm just like when I was younger, Goosebumps were big. And so
Yes.
like when I got older, I got like the Monster Blood collection of the three books. I still have not finished that as an adult. I still have the bookmark in it from college. That's how slow I am. But yeah, I'm gonna get to them all. But before we go, and say our goodbyes, I wanted to play a quick game with you. I have two choices, either about celebrity couples or red flags versus green flags in relationships.
Oh, I'm so bad at pop culture stuff, so I think you're gonna have to go with the second option.
All right. Not everyone's a celebrity person. I understand that. My husband would probably know two names on the list I have because they are in Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Maybe three.
My husband would know them all. It's just I don't know them.
Well, okay. So online there is a discourse about red flags versus green flags in the relationships, and I'd love to know your opinion on which of the following traits in people are either red flags or green flags that you've come across. So if they are family centric.
If they're family centric,
Is that a red?
is that supposed to be a red
Yeah,
flag?
is that the green flag or a red flag?
I don't agree with this question. I mean, it depends on the person they're with, but I would say if the other person is also family centric, then it's a green flag. Great.
What if they are the typical like mama's boy?
That could potentially be a red flag if you want to marry this person. I want them to differentiate themselves and step into their manhood.
What about a contrarian?
Depends on the person. I'm gonna say more. Yeah, I would say it depends on the person that they're partnering with, but I would say could be a red flag.
They work a lot, which this one's a hard one.
It depends on how they manage thirds. So, if this is an agreed upon thing, like, you are like, we're prioritizing our relationship and we are also prioritizing you working, and this is agreed upon, then great, green flag. But if this is like, it's pulling away from the relationship, this isn't what the other person wants, this is taking away from what you guys want, then it's a red flag. But we call it thirds, and a third is anything. It could be your hobbies, your health, your kids, your career, anything.
Mhm. And what if they're a hoarder, but in like the collector type of way? Like they have too many Funko Pops, or they're a sneakerhead, something like that.
Again, it depends on the person you're with. If they're like, this is great, and we are, it's really like I would say there's almost no right or wrong way you can do relationship if you're both consenting to this and you both agree on this is working for us and it's not hurting anybody else. So here you are, if you've got a collector, great. If the other person is like, this is wonderful and I can love you just the way you are, wonderful. Let's just set some agreements that your collection doesn't take over this section of the living room or whatever, that I have all these other things that I'm doing, right? Then wonderful.
Well, I think what we found here is that red flags and green flags are personal and they are not universal. So online, let's stop judging everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. For everything. Everything I said, like everything has a special little caveat of let's really talk about and create what works best for the people actually involved in this.
And before we really head out, can you remind people where they can find you and Relearn Love online?
Of course, relearnlove.com and on Instagram at Coach Eri Kardos. And I'd love to hear from you. What resonated today, or if you're feeling stuck in something, just say hi and I can start that conversation and find out where you need some support. I'd love to help you out.
Well, Eri, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about a crush that worked out. I'm hoping more are on the way, but maybe not if they're crushing on anime characters and football players, but who knows? But everyone, you can find all of Eri's information below, including a link to her Tedx Talk. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, along with some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, Season to Season, The Sip List, and Toontastic Journeys. You can go to idnmtrpodcastnetwork.blog to find not only Crushgasm, but all of the aforementioned really cool podcasts. Alrighty.